Good morning. You can do better than that. Good morning. Awesome. So I'm going to spend about 45-ish minutes with you. My 30 minutes is just to get you ready for your 15 minutes of questions. So while we do that, I'd love to start by telling you a little bit more about myself. So if you'll pay attention to the screen. So now we literally have a scenario where I'm way more vulnerable in this situation than you are, right? And the reason why I always show those slides as I come in to have conversations with folks is because some of the unlearning we need to do around what's happened in diversity and inclusion and business in general is that it is your role to join organizations and become like everybody else in the organization, which you may call the business case for homogeneity. But it's actually the other way around. Who you are is what helps the business we're in retail be successful. The combination of your dimensions of difference, the combination of your experiences, the perspective you offer, based on the fact that somebody that looks like you and has had the same experiences as you may share their green money with the company you're helping support, requires that you do the exact opposite. It requires you walk into organizations and you unleash and weaponize your dimensions of difference to be able to drive the business. Now here's the real thing though. The real thing is that's hard as hell. Right? This girl standing in front of you who is proud to be plus size, has red hair, was gonna wear blue lipstick, but it didn't go with my pants, can tell you that this is real cute right now. I look real confident and real comfortable in my authenticity. There's people in this room that have known me in my 14-year Target career, and this is not who they met when I started. And it isn't who they knew up until about 4 or 5 years ago. The only reason I share that part of the story is because I don't want people to believe that one day, like you always are like this. It's a journey. But at the end of the day, the journey is focused on you staying who you are based on the truth of your experiences, and you don't adjust who you are for the organization. You change the organization until you find the one that works with who you are. Before I talk to you for a little bit more today, there's a couple things I have to do. One of them is say, thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you today. Contrary to popular belief, I actually am a supply chain girl. That's where I was born in my corporate career. I started out in one of Target's distribution centers in the booming metropolis of Tyler, Texas. It's famous for being the town next to the town Miranda Lambert's from. That's what it's famous for. And my first 5 years in this company were either in that building or they were in our headquarters distribution and planning and engineering team on the team that helped build and transfer our perishable food distribution centers. My leadership aesthetic, who I am, what I'm able to do in this job and every job I've had in between is because of where I started. So as we're at a conference called Real Women in Supply Chain, here's your case study, right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I walked in the door at Tyler, Texas. But that wasn't what they needed me to do. They were going to teach me that. But if they would have allowed the fact that I was a woman to minimize my potential, not sponsor me, not support me, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you today. And I choose to believe that the world would miss out on a little bit if Caroline wasn't who she is. That's just selfish. Second thing, the organization that I work for is a small startup in Minneapolis. Most of you guys have heard about it. But there's a team here with me that I have the pleasure to just stand up here and represent. I get to talk a really good talk right here. But I am literally just the person who gets the privilege of telling the stories of how 300,000 people get their work done every day. I didn't bring them all because they wouldn't fit. But I did bring a small sampling of them. So over there in the corner, y'all just raise your hands as the target team, if you guys will give them a hand for me. So let's have the conversation start. Somebody tell me what this is. It's not a trick question. What is that? It's a toaster. Okay. So you've seen a toaster, I've seen a toaster. Raise your hand if you know how to use a toaster. If your hand is down, pick a friend. So we have a toaster too in my house. And I have a beautiful, wonderful young woman who's 21 years old, about to graduate from NYU School of Engineering with a degree in engineering. She's a wonderful STEM girl, brilliantly intelligent, but her common sense is often questionable. And so a couple years ago when she was 17, we were sitting in the house on a Saturday morning. And as we were sitting in that house on a Saturday morning, I came downstairs in my house. This is an important part of the story, by the way. We'll get back to it. My house. Because she didn't have a house. She lives in my house. And we came down there, or I came down, and this thing, a toaster that you and I learned how to use, we know how to use this thing, was sitting on its side with the slots like this. And I politely, not politely, said, "What in the," fill in your expletive, "are you doing?" And she looked at me with the special seasoning of a teenager. You know that seasoning teenagers put on stuff where you're like, can you just take some of that off? There was nothing wrong with your words, but the way that you said it makes me want to figure out how to be away from you for as long as possible. Right? You know that stage where you like them, you love them, but you don't like them. Right? So with all of that, she goes, "I'm making grilled cheese." You're what? You're what? "I'm making grilled cheese." There's no happy ending in this story. So you can imagine the exchange between mom and daughter, estrogen versus estrogen, on a Saturday morning. And I read her the riot act on everything that she was doing wrong. Burn down the whole neighborhood, change climate change, plus burn stuff. Like, I just made up stuff because I was angry. That particular scenario ended with us being mad at each other and spending the rest of Saturday in separate rooms in a cold war of silence. Why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because as we have the remainder of our conversation, the one thing I want you to remember is this. Where we need to agree is on the destination to creating gender parity in supply chain. Where we don't have to agree is on the many paths that help us get there. Cadence, my daughter, was technically not doing anything wrong with the way that she chose to make grilled cheese. Technically. To this day, I still think I was right, but technically. But what she was doing was making it a different way than I was taught to make it. And because I had the authority, I shut it down. The path to women continue to have gender parity in supply chain is going to be an exercise in becoming really comfortable with the many paths to a solution, but agreeing on the solution. And we will have to individually manage the way it will feel to have somebody interacting with us that's different from us, and only give feedback, engage, and coach when we are not en route to the same destination. Because for me, there's only a couple ways you make a grilled cheese sandwich. It's either on a skillet on the stove, on your George Foreman, or when you were in when you were in college, an iron. Agree on the destination, negotiate the paths to get there. And Cadence to this day still thinks she's right, and so do I. So you heard me say this thing about the business case for homogeneity and leaving things as is, right? So I perused the internet and found this. And at a high level, what it told me was 70 to 80% of the jobs in supply chain are held by men. Anybody want to disagree? Okay. 95% of top-level supply chain positions within Fortune 500 companies are held by men. So we're going to do a group exercise really quick. If you self-identify as a woman, because that's how D&I people talk. I don't get to tell you if you're a woman. But if you self-identify as a woman, please stand up. As a woman in supply chain. You know who you are. Stand up. Okay. Would you guys say maybe it's about 10% of the room that's standing up? Any disagreement to that quick math? That's about 10% of the room, right? Right? So this is a physical demonstration that supports the data. Literally. I didn't know who was coming, but literally by who's standing up in the room. And some of you guys, some of the women standing up are vendor partners, some are in companies, but this is it. This is it. Thank you, women. Have a seat. I won't make you do anything else. I appreciate you. Raise your hand if you self-identify as male. If you know a woman in your network, that you believe could be highly successful in supply chain, but they are not here with you, stand up. You know a woman who could be highly successful in supply chain, but they are not here with you, please stand up. This gives me hope. Because what this says to me is, the problem is not supply. The problem is not that we don't have women out there who are fully qualified to be successful in a field that right now doesn't have parity in representation. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a seat. I don't need to explain this slide in too much because what it's telling us is there's more women in the workforce. Surprise. Which means that all of us collectively, women and men, have people that we can go get that could lead us towards a better result as it pertains to gender parity. I have no idea what this graph then would look like if it went all the way to 2018, but I got some guesses that that blue line and green line just get closer together. We are in a business as retailers trying to get every possible person to spend their green money with the businesses we support. We're not a nonprofit organization as a retailer. That's a lie, and we don't need to be embarrassed about that. We make money. And I don't know what anybody else feels, but I'm like, all money is green, and I'll take it from anybody. Who you are doesn't matter. If your money's green, you're my friend. Because I'm trying to go ahead and retire to Bora Bora. Our ability to continue to get that green money is dependent upon having representation of the people who spend the money, whose cultural demographics continue to shift. Can you read this? Yes, you can. It's great, right? Super clear. I'll tell you what it says. What it's telling us is across black women, black men, Asian women, Asian men, Hispanic women, Hispanic men, and everything else in between, there's more. And there'll continue to be more. So if we have a retail environment that looks like what just happened in this room with the first question, where very few women stand up, how are we going to continue to get money from women? How are we going to continue to build a business that speaks to the needs of women? Unless the plan is to keep the entire country male, we've got some work to do to be relevant. And by the way, this thing is past the point of opt-in. This thing is at the point where we're saying, if you don't do it, begin to prepare to be irrelevant and close your doors. I don't need everybody to believe in D&I and walk around going, D&I is awesome, everybody should join it. What I need is for everybody to understand at a baseline, your business vitality is at risk if you don't have folks working in your organization, delivering what your organization is supposed to deliver, that represent the consumer demographics out there. Again, this small startup I work for in Minneapolis cannot afford to have any homogeneity in our decision making, because we don't decide who walks in the door and buys our product. And I want everybody to feel like they are thought about when they walk in our doors. People ask me what's the business case for diversity all the time. First of all, I think that's a cop-out question. I think people can answer that question on their own, but it's just comfortable to sit there because the next step is uncomfortable. But a common response I give when people ask me what's the business case for diversity is, before I tell you the business case for diversity, give me the business case for homogeneity and let's see how strong your argument is. If you can convince me that having a homogeneous organization, if it's all black women, or if it's all white men, or if it's all Asian men, whatever it is, all of one thing, if you can convince me that that is the right path for retail's future, I will shut up. So instead of asking me the business case for diversity, talk yourself out of the business case for homogeneity. You'll find your answer. Tell me why homogeneity will not sustain a retail business. I have these words on my shirt, if you haven't noticed. Ain't I a Woman is an extemporaneous moment that was created by Sojourner Truth in the 1800s at a women's rights convention. She was born a slave, had been an activist for most of her life, and gave this fantastic storyline that within it had the statement, ain't I a woman? And this line, this particular paragraph within it is what I love. So I'm going to read it to you not because you can't read, but because I just want to make sure that the words are heard the right way. Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's they call it? Somebody whispers intellect. That's it, honey. What's that got to do with the woman's right or Negro's rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? If you are going to make the commitment to bring gender parity into the organizations you work in that work to support retail, there can be a number of misunderstandings that may make you afraid about it. Oh my God, if we let women in, there'll be more people on maternity leave, and what the hell are we going to do when they're on maternity leave? You guys haven't thought that, just me. Oh my God, if we have women, meetings are going to be more emotional. Can we just please get to the decision? We don't have time for feelings. If we have more women, we'll be worried about men harassing them and have a distraction to our business. Whether those are thoughts you've heard or not, the point is the idea of bringing forth gender parity comes with some questions that are probably just natural with no malicious intent related to how does the workplace change if you make a commitment to increase gender parity, and that is a good question to sit in. What is not a good question to sit in is that because I'm worried about all those things, I'm just going to leave stuff the same. What Sojourner Truth is saying when she says this about Ain't I a Woman is this. If every single person in this room has a cup, but only the men have something in the cup, but their cups are full, and all the women need is a half cup full, would each man spill half his cup into a woman's cup so they both have a half full cup? What if we could achieve gender parity? But to achieve it, individually, each of you would lose your job. But we would be at 50-50 representation across men and women. But you, all of you, would be out of a job because the trade would be, we'll get to 50-50, but you guys no longer work in supply chain. Would you do it? This is somewhat of a rhetorical question, but let me tell you its intent. Its intent is to stop us individually from worrying about self-preservation when we have a business imperative that unaddressed will render us irrelevant. We are in crisis. We are at a level of urgency related to our business staying alive by serving changing demographics. And if somebody said they could make it happen for you and you would lose your job, what would be most important? Bringing more women into your workplaces, as well as other components of diversity and inclusion, will require self-sacrifice. It'll require putting your name on women. It will require sponsoring women. It will require shutting the people up that give the uninformed narrative about all the things that are going to be more difficult because women will be more a part of the workplace. It will require you take some personal risk. It will require a different level of resiliency. It will require a ton of inner work to address what within your spirit is creating a headwind for gender parity. It will require listening courageously. It will require teaching. It will require systemic unbundling to rebundle it the right way. It will require things that are going to take you outside of what you've comfortably been doing for however long you've been in this business. And that statement is not just for men, it's for women too. So if your path to a commitment in gender parity has connected to it an assumption of comfort, you're setting yourself up for failure. It is going to be a constant state of discomfort. And it's not going to be easy, short, or immediate. You might not even live to see the impact of your actions. But as a commitment to making sure that the retail industry can continue to serve the demographics of the consumers, you have to do it. And you have to do it without waiting for the gold star that you did it. It has to become a part of how you lead and run your business every day. By no means am I standing up in front of you saying we're perfect. I'm not. However, what I'm proudly standing in front of you to say about Target is we're committed differently than we've ever been before. 36% of our board of directors, 36% of our C-suite team is female. 36%. I have nothing to do with the hiring at those two levels, as you can assume. Are we proud of that? Yes. Is it good compared to benchmark? Yes. Are we satisfied? Hell no. But the work is the work. I'm going to use a little bit of a comparative approach to tell you about a place within Target where we've made a different kind of commitment, how that's progressing, and how that can play into then what we can use as simple ways to change gender parity in supply chain and support of retail. Because I'm going to give you things that are simple and you've heard before 1,000 times, so prepare yourself to not be wowed. Prepare yourself to feel reinforced and validated on the things that are most important. So in the technology space, which in the world of tech, our technology team is not as big as companies that are all tech, but we do have a significant amount of technology roles in our team and within the business. And we have been trying to work on gender parity in that for a long time. The pivot that technology made to be able to see progress, and I'll tell you later on what happened there, started with hiring a leader who said, I don't understand why it's so difficult for you guys to understand that the next time I walk into a room of this business, it will be at least 50% female. Literally, that's what he said, walked out, and voila, people got in line. What you see up here is a quote as he was speaking with NRF, which I know, but just listen to the quote. Second, we brought our engineering team in-house by hiring more than 700 new engineers and by drastically culling our contractor base. We need to have a great in-house engineering team and culture, and that's why we're focused on hiring more women technologists. In fact, we're working toward an ambitious goal of 50% female hires for entry-level engineering roles over the next year. He said that. He said that internally, he said it externally. It's a really simple message. What are you going after? People get worried about quotas when they talk about goals. They're different. Goals are about having a common language for what progress looks like. Quotas are about fulfilling a minimum requirement and being compliant. Different. So Arthur Valdez is somebody that's joined the Target team recently. So the supply chain version of that so far, of these clear and measurable goals, which is step one, he said we're going to reduce the turnover. And when he's talking about turnover, part of it's overall attrition, but also we measure turnover in a specific way within Target, which is the difference in how, in this particular case, women are attriting compared to the dominant population, which would be males in this. And the goal is that people are attriting at the same rate. Yes, overall attrition is important, but if attrition in your entire company is the flu, then the women don't get to have pneumonia. They get to graduate to the flu too. And on the other end, if you find yourself having more men attriting than women, you have a problem as well. That's why we call it the turnover gap. Increase diverse and female representation at all levels. We set a set of company goals related to team and business, connected to representation. He's just demonstrating what that means within the function that he supports. Step one, make clear, measurable, and somewhat self-sacrificial goals based on, and make sure it's said by the person who has the ultimate power to make decisions, because they'll get the ecosystem in line. Accountability. Again, nothing here is going to be rocket science. Regularly reviewing team results with the senior leadership team and having open and transparent conversation about quantitative and qualitative results. That's what Mike's doing. If we try to do this work in secret, it'll stay in secret and the result will be a secret. Because part of exposing and having more open dialogue around the accountability and attaching that to performance in some way, shape, or form, so at the very least you lose a couple thousand if you're not committed, also then brings everybody in to help be a part of the solution and helps us delegate the work out across more entities. So when, from a supply chain perspective, we're continuing to decentralize accountability. So one of the things we've had as a realization, my colleague Pat Myers is here, is HR sitting too close to the middle on driving the work related to gender parity? Or is the business function owning it as a part of what helps drive their strategic objectives? The fastest way to test that question is ask HR a question about diversity, ask the business, and see if they give the same answer, or an answer at all. This is not an HR initiative. This is not a United Colors of Benetton, I want to teach the world to sing thing. This should be a part of your business strategy. This should be a part of your business vitality. This should be the thing you are most afraid of taking your business apart. And therefore, if all the conversations you have about business follow a particular routine, as should your conversation about gender parity. If you do metrics every day to see how you're performing on productivity, you should do the same metrics on how you're performing on diversity, recruiting, productivity, and gender parity. Dedicating specific resources to diversity and inclusion. Sometimes things are all functioning the same and something within that starts to perform less than the way that you want it to. So you dedicate specific resources to go in, dig deep, bring it up to parity, then that resource can go somewhere else. It's what we do with our products every day. We sell stuff in stores. We know how those things are supposed to perform. If anything is not performing as expected, there's a triage of a group of people who own that particular product at every level. They're given permission to go off, figure out a solution, come back with the solution to get it back to parity, and then they go back to their work. But God forbid somebody do that on diversity, then we get worried. Well, why do we need to just talk about what's happening with women? What about what's happening with everybody? Everybody else is fine. That's why we're dedicated to women. When it gets to parity, then we can let it go and do for all. But what we've been doing for all isn't working for some, and that should never be okay. Accountability. Pipeline. What we found in the tech space was that the places and spaces where we were going to meet, and I like to say entice talent, wasn't sufficient to get to our goal. So we built different ways of going to get them. What you see in that tech statement there, yes, professional and college, yes, we are going down to high school levels. Now, it's going to be a while before the folks in high school have an opportunity to work at Target or anywhere else in corporate America and in retail. But if we can start changing the pipeline in high school, there'll be plenty of talent for all of us to hire. And as a company that sits in 1,800 communities, we cannot just be nearby, we have to be a good neighbor. And part of our role is making sure those communities continue to be economically healthy and safe, but also to see how the communities that we are a neighbor to can continue to help us do our business. So the tech industry went all the way down to high school. If you want more detail on that, you can go look at our corporate social responsibility report and see all the programs that they built. It's public information. But they knew they needed to go actually invest in the pipeline, regardless of if they'd ever work at Target, to change the outcome. The work they've done has been so recognized that the Anita Borg Institute, which is a huge gender parity organization within tech, awarded them their premier award this year. Because they've changed the status quo, they've broken the system that was broken and put it back together the right way to reach their objectives. In supply chain, one of the things we've already started is Target Arrows Camp. This is something we uniquely fund and support. Arthur, Pat, and others help make it come to life in partnership with talent acquisition. And we use it to go teach people, right? If we are worried that the gender parity journey is going to have a competency gap, then we can play a role in closing the competency gap so it's not a barrier to gender parity. And by the way, we're a for-profit organization, so we can put a couple dollars in there to make it happen. If it's going to help the outcome for us as a company, but more overall for supply chain and retail as a whole. Target Arrows Camp, year 2, right? 1 year done? Yep, 2nd year coming. And you see there the pictures of the people who participated. We don't know if they're all going to come work at Target, but doggone it, they're going to be good for supply chain and retail, and we're okay with that. So I'm going to carpe the hell out of this diem. 40% of our supply chain leadership team is female. We're proud of that stat. We just got there a little while ago, but we're proud of it. But part of the responsibility we all have is to always be looking out for great talent. So when I got invited to the RELA Women in Supply Chain Conference and talked to my friend Pat over there, he's like, we got 2 jobs open. We have 2 jobs open at the senior level of our supply chain business. I know you can't read the bullet points. This entire deck will be available to you afterwards. However, this is a shameless plug saying, if you're interested in being a part of a transformative retail organization that is working on supply chain, come on through. They're right over there. Talk to them. They'll help you figure out if you want to be a part of us. And if you happen to be a woman or know a woman who would be great for this job, you have the responsibility to share that as well. That was literally just a shameless plug for open jobs. Nothing more. There's no lesson in it. It's That's a beg. Then there's programmatic solutions. One of the things we mistake as we work towards gender parity or any other kind of parity is that if you build it, they'll come and then everything else will be fine. You know that getting them and retaining them are two different sets of efforts. So you need to have a way that even as you're bringing in the new talent that's helping you get to parity on what you're focused on, that you've built mechanisms that help them feel adequately included based on the fact that they may be coming into a culture that has been built around whoever the dominant representation is and may be missing some things that make it equal for all. On the tech side, we have TWIST, stands for Target Women in Science and Technology, who spend a lot of time as women in this field, making sure we're looking at all angles of what's happening in our workplaces and workforce from a tech perspective and adjusting it for what needs to happen for gender parity to not just be there, but sustained. It's an internal group. And then that has existed for a while in the form of like an employee resource group. What you also see is a program they started, which is the Engineer Manager Immersion Program, that was specifically created to meet Mike's comment about women engineers. On the tech side, on the supply chain side, this is something we've had for a while. It's called Supply Chain Aspire program that takes a look at our entire supply chain talent pool and make sure that we're setting them up with mentors and sponsors, make sure that we're giving them peer learning opportunities, and make sure we're giving collective learning. But the other thing it does is give psychological safety for the people that we are including in our work and including as a part of the work we deliver that may feel like only for a little while because we're still on the journey. We in supply chain are very focused on physical safety. We were in one of our distribution centers yesterday talking about that. We know the importance of physical safety. What would happen to our worlds if we prioritize psychological safety as much as physical safety, so that as we continue to create parity in the teams that we work with, they feel equitably included, involved, and valued, and don't feel like by being one of few, all their job is to look small, not say anything, and just get through the day. If anybody who's working on gender parity recruits a group of people who may not be in the group right now, brings them in, and those people literally just start to conform, they're killing the business case. Please quit. We're not including more people because we want to. We're including more people so we can be successful as a business. So if you come in, forget all of that, and put on whatever mold outfit aligns with the organization you're in, you're killing the business case, you're not helping us, please go find a job somewhere else. When I started with who you are is not negotiable, I meant it. Then there's other organizations outside that help us continue to benchmark, understand, and see how we can continue to be better. Girls Who Code and Society of Women Engineers help on the tech side. Why do I have a question mark on this side? Because this is what I need from RELA women in supply chain. Brian Cornell, you may have heard of him. He runs the small startup in Minneapolis, but also took over leadership of RELA this year. And he talked about three very simple things as his focuses and priorities. He talked about a need to continue to be aligned as we're dealing with issues that are publicly going to have an impact on retail, border adjustability, tax reform, whatever you want to pick. How do we collectively continue to help the retail industry work through those things? Two, how do we make sure we understand how technology is playing a role in retail? Number three, making sure we're as diverse and inclusive an industry as we can be. I would love, and I'm sure some of you would for your company, for RELA women in supply chain to come back to us and say, Caroline, by 2025, we want all retailers to be at 50-50 gender parity, and we need every company who has a role in it to contribute by making the commitment, submitting their data, blah, 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 blah. RELA women in supply chain is specifically positioned to set forth a mandate and a vision for how the retail industry is going to get to this. And if they can do that in the same way that other partners in other industries have, we can still be one in a group while being one group. This is a giraffe. It is a giraffe. It looks just like a giraffe. The giraffe represents your personal commitment to what you're going to do in this space. I just gave you what we would love to be the organizational commitment from RELA. This part is about you. And you've got options on how you can choose to go about some sort of personal commitment after walking out today. You can choose to be opaque about it, which means very few people get to see what you're doing. And you're doing it in secret meetings with secret people who have secret plans to do secret things. And your result will be a secret. And if you choose to do that, just know, make sure it matches your outcome. If your outcome is about being secret, then please take the path of being opaque. Then you have a middle ground that's about being a little translucent. You get a little bit of visibility, but not all. We'll just do, let's just go to campuses and recruit. Okay. You know what? Let's promote Sally. Then there'll be one. Sufficient. We have gender. Again, if your outcome is to have minimal results, translucent helps you get that. Or you can be transparent. You can be transparent and put on the table the honesty of the problem, put on the table the honesty of where you are on thinking about solutions and if you need help. And then you can use organizations like RELA. We can talk together as partner companies about how we collectively and individually make a change in what happens with women. We see where there's coalition opportunities in the same way. What border adjustability tax, what RELA did with border adjustability tax, RELA can repeat on gender parity. My choice is that you take a transparent approach, because if your plans have been secret, it's not working, so you might as well try it. Try the transparent approach. If it fails, you can go back to being opaque. However, transparency brings with it a lot of vulnerability that may not be comfortable. So at Target, we talk about what does it mean to coexist in a world where people around you continue to be different, but you have to give them equitable input value in that. And we call that something called stay open, which is about falling and standing, making mistakes and having victories, but it is about this consistent path to make sure that we are equitable in the experiences that people have. I'm gonna play you a quick video and then I'll close and take questions, which you guys can be asking via the app. Pay attention to the screen on what it means to stay open. What questions do you have? I don't see any yet on the screen. There they are. Do you think the Me2 movement is discouraging men from including women? Here's my opinion on that. The Me2 movement is exposing bad behavior. The Me2 movement is not just about men and women. It's about women and women. It's about women and men. It's about men and men. They're just not getting equitable voice in the story. So I don't think that the Me2 movement is discouraging men from including women. I think that the Me2 movement is calling to the carpet the kind of environment that has to be true for gender parity to truly exist in a way that everybody is appropriately valued. So the Me2 movement should be challenging you, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're heterosexual, gay, lesbian, whatever. The Me2 movement should be encouraging you to understand intentional and unintentional consequences of behavior that lessens somebody else because of your power. See the Me2 movement as an opportunity to fix it versus an opportunity to go back into the hole and be opaque. Thank you for whoever said, love your message, yes, yes, amen. Thank you, choir. You've spoken about homogeneity through the lens of gender and race. Do you see this as the same or different from thought diversity? Well, here's the thing. Thought diversity is fine. As you talk about the dimensions of difference you want to go after, yes, diverse perspectives is absolutely there. What I would argue is, first test and see if you get to thought diversity by changing diversity in some of the core demographics. You'll be surprised that you won't just get black women and Hispanic men, you'll actually get diverse perspectives. Then tell me how much of thought diversity you need to add on top of that. People hide behind the thought diversity conversation because the other one is hard. To me, it's phase 2. Start with making sure you have different perspectives in the room that look the same as the consumer base you're trying to. I bet you money you'll see your thought diversity go through the roof. Then you can fill the gap where you've got issues on thought diversity. But you can't start with thought diversity, because you can have thought diversity in a homogeneous room. How do companies create a positive environment that fosters growth for upcoming female leaders? I think that the way that a company does that is, first of all, recognize what they need to do to prepare to receive that talent. We're really good at onboarding people onto our company. We're not as good as onboarding the company to the person. So if you want to create gender parity within your organization, first thing you can do is go, what are some things about our workplace that may be 90% male that need to adjust if we're going to have more women here? You know, it was a really interesting one in tech. We did all this work to recruit women, but because there had been such high male gender representation, men had been using both bathrooms. They'd been using both bathrooms because nobody else was using the other bathroom. Women came in and may have had unfortunate events of running into a man in the women's bathroom. Not by intent, but because that had been that, and they had forgotten to adjust back to the fact that there were bathrooms for men and women. Simple, but important. So what are the things that you need to do to make sure that you're prepared to receive the talent that's creating more parity in your organization? Second, how are you going to play the role of giving air cover for the way that the majority group is going to need time to acclimate to that person so that they still feel safe as we learn and go? Number three, who's going to sponsor them through so that their career does not get impacted by how people are adjusting to it? Fast forward to 2048, and women hold 70% of senior positions within companies throughout the US. That would be good progress for women. But would it be good for the marketplace overall? Would it be fair to men to be less diverse? Here's the thing. Often when we talk about diversifying groups, people think somebody's losing out. That by creating parity, somebody now has less. That's a misunderstanding. The idea of creating parity is the identification that there are places and spaces where we are satisfied with what the representation and perspective is, and therefore we need to maintain. Remember my product example? This product is performing as we need it to. And then it is an and that says there are other areas where that story is not true. And so we're going to put extra effort, but the extra effort is only to get things to the same place. It isn't to give one group an advantage. It's to get everybody to the same starting line so that when the race starts, we actually started at the same place and then just becomes a battle of who's better. But it isn't to give anybody a head start. So I don't think there's a threat to men for the world to become more diverse at parity. I think it is about how do you understand the privilege that everybody has to give and to gain, and how do you leverage that privilege where people need it for help, and how do you get the privilege of other people where you may need it for you. My number one thing I hate in the D&I industry is nobody ever asks the straight white male what he needs, and he's constantly excluded and villainized in the conversation. That's crap, and it needs to stop. That's what's perpetuating this, well, what about me? Everybody matters. Every dimension of different matters. And we want to make sure things perform at parity across the board. And if somebody comes and says, man, we're doing all this stuff for women, and I feel like I'm not getting something, instead of reacting to them saying they're not getting something, instead say, what is it that you need that we can provide to make you not feel that way? Simple. I'll take one more, I think, based on what I look at the timing. Does parity mean equal on all levels? Does Target's maternity plan match their paternity plan? So does parity mean equal at all levels? Parity is about equity, not equal. An analogy I use often is the difference between equal and equitable is as simple as an analogy of shoes. Equal is making sure everybody has a shoe. That's not bad, that's a good idea. We all should have a shoe. Equity is making sure everybody has a shoe that fits. I'm a size 11 shoe in women's. Raise your hand if you're a size 11 shoe in women's. Let me just see if I have any friends in the audience. There you are, I see you, sister, hey. The reason why I say that is because we have a very hard time shopping for shoes that actually also maybe have like some style and trend component to them. So this event happens where cherubs come out of the sky, the clouds part, the shoes levitate into our hands when there's a size 11, because we found a cute shoe in our size. And we walk into stores expecting that we will rarely ever find a shoe that's cute in our size, and we're used to having a sad face. But we ask anyway, just hoping. A size 8 for a woman is never difficulty. They don't think about their size not ever being there. It's always there. DSW puts a green sticker on size 11s and size 5 women's shoes so that they can minimize the psychological trauma that comes with those of us in a size 11 going to find a shoe. And by the way, I don't know a level 8 that's complained about that. I don't want the level 8 shoe. Be cute, level 8. But size 11 gets to be cute too. So parity is about giving everybody the shoe that fits, not just giving everybody a shoe. The second part of that was maternity and paternity plan. Here's what I'll tell you. We are on a continuous journey to ensure that there is parity in the way that we are offering all of our benefits to our team members, agnostic of the dimension of difference they're connected to. And that's not always perfect, but we're always perfecting it to the best that we can. I'm out of time, y'all, because this thing is blinking right here. But I would say if you don't walk away with anything else, remember the 5 points I talked about. But what I actually really need everybody to do, between the women that stood up in this room, plus the men that stood up and said they know a woman who could be successful in supply chain, can you just go get them? Can you just do that? Go get them. I just told you we got 2 jobs. Teams over there. Others have 2 jobs. Can you help that woman get to a role in supply chain, even if it's not at your company? Because you saw how many men stood up when we said they knew somebody. That in and of itself would kill it. Second thing, do not ever come back to this conference without a woman with you who can be good in supply chain. Never again come to this conference without a woman who can be good in supply chain. Never again. I don't care if you have to break the rules of what level you bring to this. You don't have to come in here by yourself. Bring the women, give them exposure, help them get into organizations so we can actually make a move. So with that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. And I appreciate getting to spend some time with you and look forward to working together to resolve this. Thank you.